For 20 years, Mark Ellison lived with a silence so heavy it nearly crushed him. The daughter he'd abandoned, the one mistake he could never outrun, had vanished from his life like a ghost, leaving him with nothing but guilt, regret, and the echo of a name he no longer had the right to speak. He expected his past to stay buried. He prayed it would never find him. But on a rain-soaked evening, as thunder rolled across the sky, fate brought it to his doorstep. A hesitant knock. A familiar voice trembling on the other side. "I forgive you." Those 4 words didn't heal him. They shattered him. Because Hannah didn't come alone. Standing beside her was a little boy with wide eyes, and a secret powerful enough to tear their fragile reunion apart. And before Mark could even ask her why she'd come after all these years, the lights flickered, the walls shook, and a figure from the shadows whispered the one thing Mark feared most. "They found you." Forgiveness had brought his daughter home. But something far darker had followed. And as the storm erupted around them, Mark realized this wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of a fight for their very souls. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. The rain fell in thin silver lines as Mark Ellison stood in the dim hallway of his small house, staring at the door as if it were a verdict waiting to be read. The knock had come softly, almost shyly, yet it struck him like thunder. He hadn't expected visitors. He didn't have them anymore. Not since he traded family dinners for bar counters, bedtime stories for restless nights, and the love of a little girl for the foolish belief that he had more time. Another quiet knock. He opened the door. A young woman stood on the porch, her hair damp from the rain, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. She had eyes he recognized instantly, hazel with tiny gold flecks, the same eyes that once watched him leave with a trembling lower lip and a Mickey Mouse backpack at her feet. "Dad?" she whispered. The word sliced through him. He hadn't heard it in 20 years. "I'm sorry," Mark managed, his voice hoarse from disuse and regret. "Hannah." She blinked and a small, brave smile appeared. "I forgive you." The words were so gentle, so unbelievably kind, Mark felt his knees weaken. He had imagined anger, tears, accusations. He deserved all of them. But forgiveness? He wasn't prepared for that. Tears blurred his vision. "But after everything I did or didn't do?" Hannah stepped forward, shivering slightly in the rain. "Because carrying the weight of hating you was heavier than losing you. I had to let go. And I wanted to see you, at least once. To know who you became." He stepped aside wordlessly, letting her in. The house was simple, neat but lonely. A single armchair. Faded photographs of sunsets instead of people. A kitchen with one plate on the dish rack. Hannah glanced around, sadness touching her expression. "You've been alone a long time," she murmured. "I earned that," he replied quietly. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Mark's hands trembled as he poured her a glass of water, wanting desperately to do something, anything, for her. What have you been doing? Are you okay? Are you happy?" he asked. Hannah gave him a small smile, but it wavered. "Life hasn't been simple," she admitted. "But I'm standing. And I'm stronger than I used to be." Mark swallowed hard. "Did your mother ever?" "She tried," Hannah said gently. "But you left a hole too big for her to fill alone." The guilt landed like a stone in his chest. "But," she continued, her voice softening, "I'm not here to punish you. I came because I'm starting a new chapter. And I needed to understand the chapters before it." Mark nodded slowly. "If you'd let me, I'd like to be part of it." Her eyes softened. "Maybe. One step at a time." A beat of silence passed between them, fragile, tentative, hopeful. Then Hannah reached into her bag and said quietly, "There's something I need to show you. Something important." Mark watched her fingers tremble as she unzipped the pocket. She pulled out a folded document, and a photograph of a small child with the same hazel eyes. Before Mark could breathe a word, Hannah whispered, "I didn't just come for me." She slid the photograph across the table. "He needs you too." Mark stared at the picture, at the innocent face, at the eyes that mirrored both his and hers, and felt the world tilt. "Hannah, what happened? Who is?" But Hannah's expression shifted, fear flickering in her eyes as she glanced toward the door. "I'll explain," she whispered. "But not yet. We don't have much time." Before Mark could speak, a loud knock thundered against the front door, hard, urgent, nothing like the gentle tap Hannah had used. She froze. Mark's blood ran cold. "Who is that, Hannah?" he asked. Her lips parted, voice trembling. "Dad? They followed me." The pounding on the door rattled the thin walls, each strike sharper and more urgent than the last. Mark instinctively stepped in front of Hannah, shielding her the way he should have decades ago. His heart pounded hard enough that he feared she could hear it. "Hannah," he whispered, "who's out there? Who followed you?" Her breath came fast and uneven. "It's complicated, Dad. I didn't want to bring this to your doorstep, but I had nowhere else to go." The knock came again. No, not a knock this time. A fist. Then another. Bim, bim, bim. Mark's instinct screamed danger. He reached for the deadbolt with shaking fingers and slid it quietly into place. The house suddenly felt too small, too fragile. As if one strong shove from the outside could splinter the life he was just beginning to taste again. "Hannah," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "you have to tell me what's going on." She pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to calm her breathing. "I will. Just trust me. Please." Trust. The word made Mark feel like someone had placed a hand around his heart and squeezed. He didn't deserve her trust, but she had come to him anyway. The pounding stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Mark exchanged a glance with Hannah. Her eyes were wide, glistening, her shoulders rigid with terror. She clutched the photo of the little boy to her chest, as though protecting it could somehow protect him. A slow, scraping sound dragged across the front window. Mark felt his stomach drop. Someone was out there. Someone watching. He could see the silhouette now, a tall figure moving just beyond the curtain, lingering. Hannah squeezed her eyes shut. "They weren't supposed to find me this fast. What do they want from you?" Mark demanded in a hushed voice. Hannah swallowed hard. "It's not about me." She looked up at him, tears brimming. "It's about my son." Another thud, this time from the back door. They weren't alone. They were surrounded. Mark's breath hitched. He moved closer to her, placing a trembling but protective hand on her shoulder. "Hannah," he whispered, "whatever you're running from, whatever danger you're in, you're not facing it alone anymore. I promise you that." Her lip trembled. "You don't understand. If they get in here—" A sharp crack split the air. One of the back windows shattered. Hannah gasped. Mark's heart lurched. Footsteps crunched on the broken glass. Someone had just climbed into the house. Hannah clutched his arm, her voice barely audible. "Dad, they found us." The footsteps grew closer, slow and deliberate. And then, from the shadowed hallway, a man's voice emerged. Familiar to Hannah. "Hannah," the voice called softly, "I told you running wouldn't change anything." Mark felt Hannah go completely still beside him. He turned toward the hallway, bracing himself. But nothing could have prepared him for what stepped out of the shadows. A figure stepped into the faint glow of the kitchen light, and Mark's breath caught in his throat. The man was young, no older than Hannah by more than a few years, dark-haired, sharply dressed, and far too calm for someone who had just broken into a stranger's house. Rainwater dripped from his coat and onto the floor, forming a small, ominous puddle at his feet. But it was his eyes that froze Mark. Cold, calculated, and locked on Hannah with a familiarity that turned Mark's stomach. Hannah's fingers dug into Mark's sleeve. "Evan," she whispered. The name trembled out of her like a secret she never wanted to speak aloud. Evan stepped forward, unbothered by the shattered glass behind him. "You shouldn't have left," he said in an eerily gentle tone. "You know how dangerous that was. For both of you." Mark moved in front of his daughter without thinking. "I don't know who you are," he growled, "but you need to get out of my house. Now." Evan tilted his head slightly, almost amused. "You must be Mark." He said the name as if he'd rehearsed it, as if he'd been expecting this moment. "Stay away from her," Mark warned, though his hands shook. Evan's gaze flicked back to Hannah, ignoring Mark entirely. "You didn't tell him, did you?" he asked her quietly. "About the arrangement? About why you ran?" Hannah's entire body tensed. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say anything. Please." Mark felt a chill crawl up his spine. Arrangement? Evan took another slow step. "He deserves to know. Especially now." "Stop!" Hannah cried. But Evan didn't stop. His voice lowered to a silky, threatening calm. "You think forgiveness fixes everything? You think showing up on his doorstep erases what's been done?" Then, to Mark, she didn't come here for nostalgia. She came because she's out of options. Hannah shook her head desperately. "Evan, please." He held up a hand. "Hannah, you know the rules. You can run as far as you want. But the boy," his eyes narrowed, "he belongs to us until the debt is paid." Mark's heart went still. "That belongs to us?" He felt the room tilt. "What are you talking about? What debt?" Hannah's voice cracked as she grabbed Mark's arm. "Dad, don't listen to him." "No," Evan interrupted sharply. "He needs to listen. He needs to hear the truth you've been hiding." He slipped something from the inside of his coat, a folded paper. "Legal." He tossed it onto the kitchen table beside the photo of Hannah's little boy. The paper slid across the wood with a whisper that felt like a scream. Mark stared at it, then at Hannah. Her face drained of color. "That," Evan said softly, "is the agreement she signed. The one that ties her son's future to my employer." Hannah's eyes filled, her voice breaking. "I didn't have a choice." Mark felt something inside him snap. "What kind of agreement?" he demanded, trembling with a fury he hadn't felt in decades. Evan's calm smile was the most chilling thing Mark had ever seen. "Why don't you read it? Page 2, paragraph 7. He nodded toward the document casually, as if it were nothing, as if it weren't the very thing destroying his daughter in front of him. Mark stepped toward the table, fingers hovering over the paper, just as a new sound echoed from the hallway. A small voice. Sleepy. Innocent. "Mommy?" Hannah's blood ran cold. Mark spun around. Standing at the end of the hall, rubbing his eyes with tiny fists, was a little boy with hazel gold-flecked eyes. Hannah gasped, her voice barely a breath. "No, no, baby, go back." But the child looked up, straight at Evan, and Evan smiled. Evan's smile widened, not with warmth, but possession. "There he is," he murmured. Hannah lurched forward, instinctively stepping between Evan and her son. "Don't you look at him," she hissed. "You stay away from him." But the little boy, her boy, stood frozen at the end of the hallway, his small hand still clutching the blanket he'd been sleeping with. His wide, sleepy eyes took in the strangers, the broken glass, his mother's trembling voice. "Mommy, who's that man?" he whispered. Hannah's heart cracked audibly. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Go back to the room. Mommy's right here." But the boy didn't move. Children know fear before they understand it, and he sensed it now. Mark felt something fierce ignite inside him, something buried for years, something he thought he no longer had the right to feel. A protective fire. His grandson. He stepped fully between Evan and the child, his voice low and shaking. "You're not taking him," Mark said. "I don't care what you think you have on paper. You're not touching that boy." Evan's expression finally shifted, his calm cracking like thin ice. "This isn't your decision," he said coldly. "You forfeited any say in this family a long time ago." Mark flinched, the words a direct strike. And Evan knew it. Hannah's breath hitched. "Evan, please. He's just a child. He's my son." "He's collateral," Evan snapped. The little boy whimpered, stepping back until he hit the hallway wall. Hannah's face twisted. "He is not collateral." Evan reached inside his coat again, not for a weapon, but for a phone. A single tap, a single call, and whoever he worked for could be at the house within minutes. "We're done talking," Evan said. "You had your chance to come quietly. Now." Mark moved. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't planned. It was pure, primal instinct. He lunged, slamming Evan back into the counter with a force that surprised them both. A half-full glass tipped over and shattered on the floor. Evan grunted, the phone flying from his hand. "Run!" Mark shouted to Hannah. "Get the boy and run!" Hannah didn't hesitate. She tore down the hallway, scooping her son into her arms as the child cried into her shoulder. "It's okay, baby, I've got you, I've got you." But Evan recovered faster than Mark expected. With a growl, he shoved Mark off him, sending him crashing into the table. The document, a smear of legal lies and chains, fluttered to the floor. "You have no idea what you've just done," Evan hissed. Mark staggered to his feet, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. He stared at Evan with a fire that hadn't burned in 20 years. "Try me," he said. Evan reached down, snatching up the phone. Hannah appeared in the doorway again, her son clinging to her, tears streaking his cheeks. "Dad, come on," she shouted. "We have to go. Now." Evan's thumb hovered over the call button. "I give you one last chance," he said. "Hand over the boy, or we all suffer the consequences." A heavy silence filled the room, one thick enough to crush bone. Rain pounded on the windows. The wind howled like a warning. Hannah trembled, her son sobbing quietly. And Mark stood between his daughter and the past that had come to claim her. From outside, car doors slammed. Multiple voices barked orders. Flashlights swept across the dark yard. Evan smiled. "They're here." Hannah's eyes widened in horror. Mark's pulse froze. Someone outside shouted, "Move in. Now." And then the front door burst open. The front door exploded inward with a deafening crack, splintering against the wall. Hannah screamed and clutched her son tighter. Mark pulled them behind him, bracing for armed men, for strangers in dark uniforms ready to tear their lives apart. But instead, a single woman stepped into the room. She wasn't dressed like the men Mark had imagined. No tactical gear. No uniform. Just a long black coat, rain-soaked and heavy, clinging to her like a shadow. Her presence filled the room with a cold, electric stillness. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, swept across the scene. The broken glass, the overturned chair, Mark's bleeding forehead, Hannah trembling with her son, and Evan standing in the center, phone still in his hand. Evan straightened instantly, his voice steady but tinged with fear. "Ms. Renshaw." Mark felt Hannah stiffen. She knew that name, and she was terrified of it. The woman, Ms. Renshaw, didn't look at Evan. Not yet. Her gaze zeroed in on the child in Hannah's arms. The entire room seemed to tilt. She stepped forward once, twice. Hannah backed away instinctively until her shoulders pressed against the wall. Mark darted in front of them. "Stay away from my family." Finally, Ms. Renshaw's eyes shifted to him. "Family," she repeated, as though tasting the word. "Interesting." Her voice was calm. Smooth. Too smooth. Then she turned to Evan. "Explain." Evan swallowed hard. "She ran him. After everything we did for her. After the agreement. I tracked her here. She resisted." Ms. Renshaw raised a hand. Silence. Evan froze mid-sentence, as if her gesture cut off not just his words but his courage. She stepped closer to him, her heels clicking softly on the floor. "You broke a window," she said quietly. Evan blinked. "Ma'am, You frightened the child." Her tone remained flat, emotionless, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Evan paled. "I was only..." "Retrieve." Her eyes flicked toward the boy. "Not traumatize." She stared down at the shattered glass, then back up at Evan with chilling indifference. "You've disappointed me." Evan opened his mouth to speak, but never got the chance. Ms. Renshaw moved with startling speed. Her hand cracked across his face with a sound like a whip, sending him crashing into the counter. He gasped as he hit the floor, stunned. Hannah covered her son's eyes. Mark stumbled back, pulling them with him. Ms. Renshaw smoothed her glove as though brushing off dust. Then she turned toward Hannah, toward the child. "All of this," she said softly, "could have been avoided." "Please," Hannah whispered. "Ms. Renshaw, please. He's just a little boy." "That little boy," Renshaw replied, "is worth far more than you understand. You should have stayed where you were placed." Mark stepped between them again, fists clenched. "I don't care who you are. You're not taking him." For the first time, Renshaw's expression shifted, just slightly. Not anger. Not fear. Interest. She tilted her head. You're the father she ran to? Mark didn't waver. I am. And you believe you can protect them? She asked. I will, Mark said. Renshaw studied him with an almost clinical curiosity. Then she gave a soft, chilling laugh. Oh, Mark Ellison. I think you truly believe that. Her gaze flicked toward the door, and without turning her head, she snapped her fingers. Footsteps approached, heavy, synchronized. Figures appeared outside the threshold, silhouettes shifting in the rain. Reinforcements. Hannah gasped. No, no, please, please don't. Renshaw took a step forward. This is the last time I'll ask, she said calmly. Hand over the boy. Mark felt Hannah trembling behind him. Felt the little boy bury his face in her neck. Felt 20 years of guilt burning into something fierce and immovable. No, he said. Renshaw sighed, almost regretfully. Then you leave me no choice. She raised her hand, and the men outside reached for their weapons. But before they could move, a deafening horn blared outside. Tires screeched. Floodlights cut through the rain. Everyone froze. Evan lifted his head weakly from the floor. His eyes widened in confusion. Renshaw slowly lowered her hand. Hannah's breath caught. Mark turned toward the window, just as a massive SUV skidded to a stop in the driveway, inches from Renshaw's men. The driver's door flew open. The figure leapt out and shouted, Ellison, get them out of the house now. Mark's heart stopped, because he recognized the voice. After 20 years, he never thought he'd hear it again. For a split second, the entire world held its breath. Rain hammered the roof. Renshaw's men froze, their weapons half raised. Hannah clutched her son so tightly he whimpered into her shoulder. Evan stared in stunned confusion from the floor. But Mark felt the years collapse around him. That voice. That impossible, unmistakable voice. He staggered forward, staring out through the broken window as the figure sprinted toward the porch, boots splashing through the flooded yard. The man reached the doorway, lean, soaked, out of breath, and Mark saw his face. Older. Weathered. A scar along the jaw that hadn't been there before. Eyes sharp, urgent, but achingly familiar. Alex? Mark whispered. His son. The child he lost long before he lost Hannah. Alex Ellison, who disappeared at 18 without a trace, was standing in his doorway. Hurry! Alex barked, motioning them toward him. Dad, get them out, now. Hannah stared in shock. Alex? You're? How do you? But Alex wasn't looking at her. He was glaring directly at Ms. Renshaw. Well, Renshaw said quietly, this is unexpected. One of her men stepped forward. Ma'am, that's... I know exactly who he is, Renshaw snapped. Alex's hand slid inside his jacket. Not for a weapon, for a badge. He held it up just long enough for Renshaw to see it. Hannah gasped. Mark's mouth fell open. Even Renshaw's eyes flickered, the smallest fracture in her composure. You shouldn't be here, she said sharply. Alex gave a humorless smile. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. Breach of jurisdiction, she warned. Interference. Try me, Alex cut in, because unlike Evan over there, I know exactly what the agreement contains and who forged the signatures. Evan's face went white. A flicker of panic replaced his arrogance. Ma'am, he stammered. He's lying. He has to be. Renshaw didn't look at him. Not a glance. Her voice was a low hiss. Ellison, walk away. No, Alex said. Not this time. He pointed toward Hannah and the little boy. They're under my protection. Renshaw exhaled slowly, deliberately, as if straining to keep hold of her patience. You don't know what you're doing, she said. You don't know who you're provoking. Alex's jaw tightened. Actually, I do. I've been tracking your organization for 3 years. Renshaw's eyes narrowed. Alex took a single step into the house. Dad, he said firmly, take Hannah and the boy out the back. He didn't break eye contact with Renshaw. I'll hold them off. Mark's pulse hammered. Alex, no. Go. Renshaw raised her hand. Her men lifted their weapons again. Hannah cried out in terror, shielding her son's head with her hand. Alex, stop. They'll... But before she could finish, Alex moved. In one fluid motion, he threw something metallic onto the floor between Renshaw's men and the doorway. A small cylinder. Renshaw's eyes widened. Get down! Alex shouted. Mark lunged toward Hannah and the boy, shielding them. A blinding flash burst through the room, white, scorching, explosive, followed by a concussive bang that rattled the windows and sent Renshaw's men stumbling. Smoke filled the entrance. Chaos erupted. Alex grabbed Mark's arm, pulling him toward the back hallway. Go! Now! Mark stumbled, helping Hannah as she clutched her terrified son. They ran. Through the hallway, past the shattered window, toward the back door. Behind them, Renshaw shouted orders through the smoke. Evan coughed and crawled for cover. Men scrambled to recover their footing. And Alex stayed behind, blocking the hall, preparing to face them. Just as Mark shoved open the back door, he turned back. Alex, he shouted through the haze. Alex met his eyes through the smoke. Dad, go. Mark hesitated, and that hesitation cost him. Because at that moment, a new voice echoed from the front of the house. A voice deeper, rougher. A voice that froze Renshaw mid-command. Enough. The smoke parted. A tall man stepped through the broken doorway, umbrella in one hand, untouched by the storm as if the rain itself feared to touch him. Renshaw whispered one word. Sir. Alex's face drained of color. Hannah choked on a breath. Mark felt something cold coil through his spine. The man smiled faintly, eyes settling on Hannah's little boy with unsettling calm. I believe, he said, this is where I take what belongs to me. All movement in the room stopped. Hannah screamed, Alex stepped forward, Renshaw's men raised their weapons, Mark reached for his family, and the man lifted a single finger. Bring me the child, he said softly. The rain hissed against the broken windows, filling the room with a harsh, cold rhythm. Time slowed. Every heartbeat echoed in Mark's ears. Hannah's son whimpered, pressing closer into her chest. Mommy, who is that? Mark's blood ran ice cold. I don't know, but he's dangerous. Very dangerous. The man in the doorway didn't move, didn't blink. Yet he radiated authority, an invisible weight that pressed down on everyone in the room. Renshaw, who had been fierce and calculating, now looked almost deferential. Her voice was low, almost reverent. Sir, she said again. He's the one you've been waiting for. Alex took a step forward, fists clenched. You're not taking him. You've got no right. The man smiled faintly, his gaze flicking to the boy. Right? He echoed as if the concept amused him. I don't need rights. I only need what I am owed. Evan, still on the floor, whimpered, his arrogance gone, replaced by raw fear. Please, you don't understand. She doesn't, he's just a child. The man's eyes sharpened. Enough, he said. A single motion of his hand, almost imperceptible, and the men behind him froze in place, as if bound by an invisible cord. Hannah clutched her son tighter. Dad, what do we do? Mark's jaw tightened. We protect him. No matter what. The man tilted his head, studying Mark. You. His voice carried amusement, tinged with something darker. The one who abandoned her 20 years ago, and yet she still forgave you? Hannah's eyes widened. She couldn't speak. She could only hold her son. Do you know what forgiveness costs? The man asked. Because I intend to collect. Mark took a protective step in front of them. I don't care. You're not taking him. You'll have to go through me. The man's lips curved into a faint, unsettling smile. Bold but foolish. I expected nothing less from her father. A tense silence fell. The storm outside raged as if nature itself was holding its breath. Then the little boy stirred, squirming slightly in Hannah's arms. His tiny voice, weak but curious, whispered, Mommy, why does he want me? Hannah's heart broke. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Daddy's here. Uncle Alex is here. We won't let him take you. The man in the doorway laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down Mark's spine. Ah, innocence. So fragile. So precious. He tilted his head toward Alex. And you, interfering. Brave. But you forget. I always get what I want. Alex's fists clenched. Not this time. The man's gaze sharpened. You think you can stop me? You are barely a shadow of what I am capable of. Suddenly, a sound from outside. A low, mechanical whirring. A shadow fell across the doorway. Everyone turned. A vehicle. Dark, armored, impossibly fast, skidding to a stop in the yard. A hatch opened, revealing another figure, someone Mark and Alex didn't expect. And then the man's eyes widened slightly, just enough for the smallest crack of doubt to appear on his otherwise flawless composure. The newcomer raised a hand. Controlled. Determined. Step away from the boy, the voice commanded. Mark's heart leapt. Who? Alex's eyes went wide. Not yet? The man in the doorway's smile faltered. So, the game begins sooner than expected. Hannah clutched her son tighter, trembling. Dad, what do we do? Mark met Alex's eyes. We fight. We survive. We protect him. That's all we can do. The man in the doorway took a slow step forward. Very well. Then let the reckoning begin. The storm outside intensified. Rain lashed against the windows. Lightning illuminated the shattered doorway in jagged, fleeting flashes. And just as Mark braced himself to face the unknown force threatening his daughter and grandson, a deafening roar split the air. The armored vehicle doors burst open, and figures began to descend. Hannah's eyes widened in horror. Who are they? Mark's lips pressed together. I don't know, but they're here to fight for us. The boy whimpered, sensing the tension. The man in the doorway smiled coldly. So much hope, yet so little time. Then, from the back of the house, a single voice rang out. Mark, take them and run. I'll handle this. Mark turned. Alex was standing at the threshold, eyes blazing with determination. Go. Now. But as Mark moved toward his family, he realized this was no ordinary enemy. And this storm, this night, it was far from over. Mark didn't hesitate. He grabbed Hannah's hand and wrapped his other arm around her son, pulling them toward the back exit. The sound of shouting, the clatter of boots, and the storm outside created a chaotic symphony, but he focused only on the tiny weight in Hannah's arms. Alex stayed behind, facing the man in the doorway. Mark caught only glimpses. The way Alex's fists clenched, the way his jaw was set like iron, the way he seemed to draw power from the storm itself. Outside, the armored vehicle's headlights cut through the sheets of rain. Figures moved swiftly from it, shadows among shadows. They were fast, precise, organized. They were allies, but Mark couldn't tell how many, or if they'd be enough. Back door, now? Alex shouted over the roar of the storm. Mark sprinted, Hannah clutching their son tightly, hearts pounding in unison. The sound of the man's voice echoed from the front of the house, smooth, low, almost mocking. You think you can escape me, Ellison? You've only just begun to understand what you've walked into. Mark's hand tightened around Hannah's. Just keep moving. Don't stop. Don't look back. They reached the back gate. Mark threw it open, the iron screeching against the rain-soaked frame. Beyond the gate, the SUV waited, its door open. Two figures, members of Alex's team, motioned urgently for them. Hannah hesitated for a moment, looking back. Through the windows, flashes of lightning illuminated the scene. Alex, standing firm against the man and his men, his form silhouetted, unyielding. Go! Mark yelled. Now! Hannah ran, Mark following close, carrying their son through the gate. Rain pelted their faces, stinging, but they didn't stop. The SUV doors slammed shut behind them, the engine roared to life, and the vehicle shot forward into the stormy night. Inside the SUV, Hannah clutched her son, shaking, sobbing, while Mark gripped the edge of the seat. Are we safe? She asked, voice trembling. Mark shook his head. Not yet. Not until we know who that man is, and what he wants with our family. Hannah's eyes widened. He said, He said the boy belongs to him. Mark swallowed hard. I know. And I won't let that happen. Outside, back at the house, Alex faced the doorway alone. The man in the doorway took a slow, deliberate step forward. He exhaled slowly, the storm washing over him like a cloak. "You've caused me inconvenience, Ellison," the man said. His voice carried over the wind. "But this doesn't end tonight. Not yet." Alex tightened his fists. "Then we'll see who survives the night." The armored SUV disappeared into the rain-soaked darkness. Inside, Mark looked down at the boy, his grandson, and felt the weight of every mistake he'd made. Every lost year. Every moment he'd wasted. "I'll protect you," Mark whispered, voice raw. "I swear I'll protect you, no matter what." The boy stirred in Hannah's arms and blinked up at him with innocent hazel gold eyes. But Mark knew the man in the doorway wasn't finished. He wasn't just powerful, he was patient. And he always got what he wanted. The storm raged on. The night was far from over. And deep in the shadows, the true game had only just begun. The SUV barreled down the winding country road, tires cutting through puddles, lightning splitting the sky. Inside, Mark gripped the seat, sweat mixing with rain that had soaked through his coat. Hannah held her son close, whispering soft reassurances, though her voice trembled. "Dad, who was that man?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but he's not ordinary. He's dangerous. And he has plans for our family." The boy stirred in her arms, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, I'm scared." Hannah kissed his forehead. "I know, baby. I know. But we're together. That's what matters." Mark glanced out the window. The trees whipped past, shadows dancing in the lightning. He thought of Alex, standing alone in the doorway against a man who radiated control over everyone in the room. A part of him panicked. He couldn't help Alex now. "Not yet. Alex?" "He stayed behind," Mark muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Hannah's hand tightened around his. "He's strong. He knows what he's doing. He's protecting us, like you're protecting us now." Mark's jaw tightened. "I hope you're right. But that man, he isn't human, not really. There's something else behind those eyes." Suddenly, the SUV shuddered violently. Tires skidded over wet gravel. Rain pounded harder, as if the storm itself had followed them. Mark turned to the driver, a young woman in black, focused, professional. "We're not out of it yet," she said tersely. "They know we're here. Renshaw has eyes everywhere." Hannah swallowed hard. "What do you mean, they?" "I thought Alex's team was—" "They're outnumbered," the driver interrupted. "And that man, he's not just a person. He has influence, reach, and power that doesn't obey normal rules." Mark's stomach tightened. "Then how are we supposed to stop him?" The driver didn't answer. Instead, she slammed her foot on the accelerator. Back at the Ellison house, the storm raged on. Inside, Alex stood alone, fists ready, breathing controlled. The man in the doorway circled him slowly, his presence oppressive, every movement precise. "You are resilient," the man said, his voice calm, dangerous. "I admire that in you, Alex. But resilience only delays the inevitable." Alex's eyes narrowed. "I don't care how strong you are. You will not take them." The man tilted his head, as if amused by Alex's bravery. "Bold, but foolish. You have no idea what is coming. You don't even know who I am." Alex didn't flinch. "I've spent 3 years preparing for this. And I know enough to stop you, if I have to." The man laughed softly, a sound that carried across the storm. "Stop me? No, Alex. You are merely a piece in a larger game. And tonight, the board is about to be set." A flash of lightning illuminated the figure behind him, Renshaw watching silently, calculating, ready to act. Alex's fists clenched tighter. "Then I'll fight. I'll hold them off until my family is safe." The man in the doorway's smile widened. "We'll see, Alex. But even the strongest guardians can fall when shadows close in." Outside, the SUV raced toward the unknown, Mark and Hannah holding on to hope, and a little boy clutching his mother, unaware of the storm, both literal and figurative, that was about to descend upon their lives. And in the darkness, the first whispers of the true threat began to emerge, echoing in the night. Ellison's, you can run, but you cannot hide. Not forever. The SUV cut through the darkness like a bullet, wipers scraping frantically across the windshield. The storm thrashed harder, as if trying to swallow them whole. Hannah held her son against her chest, rocking him gently as he whimpered. Mark sat beside them, one arm protectively across both their shoulders. The driver's voice was tight. We're 10 minutes from the safe point. But if they find us before then... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Hannah pressed her forehead to her son's. Just hold on, sweetheart. Just a little longer. Mark's mind raced. His daughter was terrified. His grandson, was caught in something he didn't understand. Alex was facing impossible odds back at the house. And Mark had no answers. He clenched his fists. I should have been there. I should have never left them. If I hadn't walked away 20 years ago. Don't, Hannah whispered suddenly. Mark blinked, realizing she was looking at him. Don't blame yourself. Not now. We need you present. He swallowed hard and nodded, though guilt still clawed at him. The SUV skidded slightly as they rounded a sharp bend. The driver muttered a curse under her breath and steadied them. Who was that man? Mark asked again. Why does he want the boy? This time, the driver hesitated. Hannah stiffened. Mark noticed. You know something, he said, gently but firmly. Hannah's eyes welled. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want anyone to know. Hannah, Mark said softly, whatever it is, tell me. Hannah swallowed, holding her son even tighter. His name, his real name. She shook her head, like saying it might unleash something terrible. They call him the curator. Mark frowned. What is he? Some kind of criminal? A trafficker? A cult leader? No, the driver said quietly. Worse. Hannah nodded, tears escaping down her cheeks. He runs an organization, she whispered. A very old one. Older than any government. Older than any country. The boy whimpered again. Hannah kissed his hair, steadying him. They take children, she said shakily. Children who, they say, have something rare. Something valuable. Valuable? He's a child, not... I know. Hannah cried, her voice cracking. But they don't see him that way. They think he's special. They think he's destined for something. Mark's stomach twisted. Destined for what, Hannah? Before she could answer, the SUV's radio crackled violently. Unit 4, do you copy? Alex Ellison is... Static hissed. Repeat. Multiple hostiles. More static. Curator has engaged. Alex is... Hannah gasped. Alex. Is he? The driver grabbed the radio. This is Unit 5. Give status now. Nothing. Only the storm. Mark felt his heart seize. We have to go back. The driver snapped her head toward him. If we go back, none of you survive the night. He's my son. Mark barked, gripping the seat in front of him. If he's in danger... He knew the risk, the driver said sharply. He stayed behind to buy you time. If you go back, his sacrifice is meaningless. Hannah sobbed softly, torn between terror and helplessness. Then, the radio crackled again. A single voice came through, distorted by static. Dad, listen, don't come back. Keep them safe. He's stronger than we thought. Static. But I'm not done yet. Alex. Mark shouted. Alex, can you hear me? The line went dead. Mark slumped back, devastated. Hannah reached out, squeezing his hand tremblingly. He's alive, she said. Dad, he's alive. We have hope. Mark nodded slowly, forcing himself to breathe. But the fear didn't leave him. The driver suddenly slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded across the wet road, coming to a jolting halt. Mark snapped upright. What now? The driver's voice was barely a whisper. Look. Headlights illuminated a figure standing alone in the middle of the road. Hat low, coat whipping in the wind. Unmoving, unbothered by the storm. Hannah's eyes widened in horror. No, she breathed. No, no, no. Mark leaned forward, heart pounding. Because even through the rain, even through the darkness, he recognized the man's silhouette. It was him, the curator, standing in their path, waiting, smiling, somehow already ahead of them. Impossible, the driver whispered. He shouldn't, there's no way he could be here. The curator lifted one hand. Just one. And the SUV's engine sputtered, choked, stopped. Smoke seeped from beneath the hood. Hannah clutched her son. Dad. Mark stared, realization hitting him like a blow. This man wasn't just powerful. He wasn't just influential. He was something far worse. Something that knew how to manipulate fate itself. The curator stepped forward slowly, deliberately, and raised his voice over the storm. Mark Ellison, bring me the child. The boy whimpered. The SUV shook, and Mark felt everything inside him break into 1,000 pieces. He had run out of road, out of time, out of places to hide. But he had not, would not, run out of fight. He opened the door and stepped into the storm. Rain hit Mark like shards of ice as he stepped out of the SUV. The wind howled, ripping at his coat, but he barely felt it. His entire focus was on the man standing in the road. The curator, unmoving, unafraid, eyes fixed on Mark like he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Inside the SUV, Hannah screamed, "Dad!" and no. Her son began to cry, sharp, terrified sobs, but Mark lifted a hand without turning around. "Stay inside," he said quietly. "No matter what happens." He could feel Hannah's trembling presence behind him, feel her heart break like a physical ache, but he didn't look back, because the curator smiled. "Such courage," he said, his voice calm as thunder rolled overhead. Or perhaps, desperation. Mark's fists tightened. "What do you want with my family?" The curator's smile deepened. "Only what was promised. Decades ago." Mark shook his head. "I don't know what that means." "You don't," the curator agreed. "But she did." Lightning flashed. The wind died for a brief, unnatural second. And the curator said 3 words that struck Mark harder than the storm itself. "Your late wife." Mark froze. The storm roared back to life. Inside the SUV, Hannah slapped a hand over her mouth, choking on a sob. "No," Mark whispered. "No. Don't you dare speak her name." "Oh, but I must," the curator purred. "For she made an arrangement. One you broke the moment you abandoned your daughter." Mark staggered backward as if struck. "What arrangement?" The curator tilted his head, watching him with predatory curiosity. "She bargained with us. With me. Your wife understood what your children would become, what they carried in their blood. She agreed to let us guide the next generation." Mark felt sick. "That's insane. She would never." "She didn't tell you," the curator interrupted smoothly, "because you were not chosen. You were never meant to know." The world tilted around Mark. His wife, gone 20 years. The woman whose death had shattered him, whose loss had driven him to make the biggest mistake of his life, running from his grief and from Hannah. And now this monster wore her secrets like chains around his family's neck. Mark forced his voice steady. "You're lying." The curator's eyes glinted. "I never lie. It's so inefficient." He took a step forward, and the wind bent around him as though obeying him. Mark forced himself to stand his ground. "You won't touch my grandson." The curator chuckled. "Mark Ellison, you cannot protect what you do not understand." Mark's jaw clenched. "Then explain it." "Oh, I will," the curator said softly. "But first, bring me the boy." "No!" Hannah screamed from inside the SUV. "Don't go near him." The curator didn't even look her way. He simply extended a hand toward the vehicle, and the locked door clicked open by itself. The SUV trembled, metal groaning. The child cried harder, reaching for Hannah. Mark's heart seized. "Stop. Take me instead." The curator sighed, almost disappointed. "You are irrelevant to the child's destiny." Lightning cracked the sky, and the curator whispered, "Step aside, Mark." Mark planted his feet. "No." For a moment, just a moment, The curator's smile vanished. Something ancient and dark flickered behind his eyes. "So be it," he said. He raised his hand. The air thickened. Pressure crushed the ground. Wind spiraled. Inside the SUV, glass began to vibrate, threatening to shatter. Hannah shielded her son with her body. "Daddy!" she cried. Mark roared, stepping forward, defying the impossible force. "You're not taking my family." The curator watched him with cold fascination. "You still don't understand what the boy is." Mark's voice broke. "What is he?" The curator leaned in the slightest bit. Enough for Mark to see something terrible and ancient in his gaze. "He is the key. The first in a generation. The one who will open the door your wife agreed to unlock." Mark's blood turned to ice. "What door?" The curator smiled again, and everything around them seemed to darken, as if the night itself leaned in to listen. But before he could answer, a sudden, deafening blast tore through the storm. Something struck the curator from behind, throwing him forward violently. He stumbled, caught off guard for the first time. Mark spun around and saw a familiar figure staggering toward them out of the wind and rain. Bruised, bleeding, barely standing, but alive. Alex. His voice was ragged but fierce. "Dad, get them out of here." The curator straightened slowly and turned. His smile returned, but this time there was no amusement in it, only wrath. The storm screamed around them, lightning slicing through the sky like blades. Rain lashed Mark and Alex as they stood shoulder to shoulder, shielding Hannah and her son. The SUV behind them shuddered, its engine coughing and dying in the curator's oppressive presence. Alex stumbled slightly, clutching his side where he'd been grazed by the previous attack. His eyes were fierce, burning with a determination that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. "Dad," he panted, "you need to get them away." "I'll hold him off." Mark swallowed, glancing at Hannah and the boy. The child's small face was streaked with tears, eyes wide in terror, and yet there was something else, something inside him, almost glowing faintly under the rain. Mark's heart clenched. That glow, it wasn't just hope. It was power. The curator stepped closer, the air around him bending unnaturally. Lightning struck, illuminating him in a wash of white light, his coat flapping in the wind. His voice rolled over the storm like a command. "You don't understand him yet, Ellison's. He's the key. The first in a line your wife promised to unlock. And no one, can stop what has already begun." Mark took a step forward. "Then tell me, what is this key? What does he unlock?" The curator's eyes glinted. "Everything. The door, the legacy, the power your wife traded for safety, all lies in his blood. And it is time." Mark's mind reeled. Time for what? He's a child. He can't. Yet he can, the curator interrupted smoothly, and he will. Whether you guide him or destroy him. A bolt of lightning struck nearby, and the ground trembled. The boy whimpered and pressed closer to Hannah, and Mark's protective instinct surged. He could feel something deep inside the child. A pulse, a rhythm that didn't belong to ordinary children. His grandson was special. Terrifyingly, impossibly special. Alex staggered to his feet, gripping a jagged piece of wood from the shattered porch railing. "Curator!" he shouted. "Back off! You will not touch them." The curator tilted his head. "He the brave son, but bravery will not protect them. You see, Ellison, the child's destiny is already written. You can resist, but resistance is meaningless." Mark clenched his fists. "No, nothing is written. We make our own choices. And I choose to protect my family." The curator's lips curved in a slow, cold smile. "Choices, very human. Admirable, even. But the door you will open. One way or another." At that moment, the boy stirred in Hannah's arms. A faint glow shimmered along his hair, his small hands flexing as if responding to a force unseen. The air thickened around them, charged with energy that made Mark's hair stand on end. Mark realized, the curator wasn't bluffing. The boy was the key. But key to what? Power? Destruction? Salvation? Before he could think further, Alex stepped between him and the curator. "Go!" he yelled. "Take them and run, now!" Mark grabbed Hannah and the boy. She clutched her son tightly, and they ran toward the SUV. Tires slipped on the wet ground, mud splashing, rain blinding them. Behind them, the curator's voice rose over the storm. "You cannot escape. The door will open. And when it does..." A deafening roar split the night sky. The ground cracked behind them. Lightning struck, illuminating a massive fissure that had formed between them and the curator. The SUV slid across the mud, teetering on the edge of the jagged crack. Mark skidded to a stop, turning back. Alex was still standing. Resolute. Defiant. "Go!" Alex shouted again. Mark took a deep breath and leapt, dragging Hannah and her son into the SUV. The vehicle jolted, engines roaring as the driver fought for control, skidding away from the fissure. Behind them, the curator raised his hand. The air shimmered. Reality itself seemed to bend. The ground where Alex stood glowed faintly. The wind twisted around him. And in the midst of the storm, the curator whispered, "This is only the beginning. The door will open, and nothing will ever be the same." Mark held his grandson close, heart hammering. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the boy stirred again, a faint glow pulsing from him, almost like a heartbeat in the dark. Mark realized, with a sinking certainty, that the real fight had just begun. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the curator was already planning his next move. The SUV rattled along the slick road, headlights barely piercing the storm. Inside, Mark held his grandson tightly, feeling the faint pulsing warmth of the child against his chest. Each beat seemed to sync with the storm outside, as though the boy's presence had drawn it here, summoning the wind, the lightning, the chaos itself. Hannah's hands shook as she clutched her son. "Dad, what's happening to him?" Mark swallowed hard. "I don't know." But the curator wasn't lying. He is special, more than we understand. The driver glanced back at them through the rearview mirror, eyes wide with tension. "We need to get to the safe point. Once we reach the compound, we can figure out what he's capable of." But she hesitated, biting her lip. "He's already calling the storm to him. That boy, he's powerful." Mark's chest tightened. He looked down at the boy, whose small hands were trembling, glowing faintly in the dim light. The child's eyes fluttered open, hazel gold flecks brighter than before, almost luminous. "Daddy," the boy whispered, voice small but strangely resonant. "The door." Mark's heart skipped. "Door." The boy's tiny fingers flexed involuntarily. A faint ripple of energy emanated from him, brushing against Mark's skin like static electricity. "It's coming. I can feel it." Hannah gasped. "What do you mean, baby? What's coming?" The boy's gaze focused, distant, as if looking into another place entirely. "The door, it's here. They're waiting. We can't hide anymore." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "We've been running all night, and it's still finding us." Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning cracked dangerously close. The air around the SUV seemed to warp, the wind tugging at the vehicle, as if trying to rip them from the road. "Hold on," the driver shouted, swerving to avoid a fallen tree. Mark pressed himself closer to the boy. "Stay with me. We're not letting anything happen to you." In the back seat, the boy's glow intensified. Energy hummed in the air, vibrating through metal and rain. Mark realized with growing horror, the curator wasn't just chasing them. He was trying to use the boy. Suddenly, a deep, resonant hum filled the SUV, vibrating in their bones. The boy's eyes widened, and he reached out instinctively. A blinding pulse of light erupted from his small hands, forcing the vehicle to jolt violently. The driver struggled to control it. What is happening?" Mark's voice cracked. "The door, it's responding to him." The boy's voice rang out clearly, commanding, "Stop, don't hurt them, let me open it." Mark froze. "Open it? What does that mean?" Outside, through the torrential rain, a shadow moved. The curator stood atop a ridge overlooking the road. His coat whipped in the wind. His eyes glowed faintly as he watched the SUV struggle. And in his hand, A small, ornate key pulsed with energy, matching the boy's glow. The curator raised it, and the hum intensified. "The door calls," he whispered, "and it will answer to its master." Mark's blood ran cold. He realized the boy wasn't just a key. He was the lock, and the curator knew exactly how to turn it. Hannah clutched the boy tighter. "Daddy, what do we do? He's so young." Mark met her eyes. "We protect him. No matter what. We fight, we survive, and we find a way to keep that door closed." The boy's hands glowed brighter. He shivered, small lips trembling. "I can feel it. I'm scared." Mark's voice hardened, steadying both himself and his family. "You're not alone. We're here. And we're not letting anyone take you. Not the curator, not anyone." The SUV sped forward. Behind them, the curator's voice rang through the storm, carried on the wind like a living thing. "Soon, the door will open, and nothing will ever be the same." The hum grew louder. The boy's glow reached a blinding crescendo. And in that instant, Mark realized, the real battle had only just begun. The SUV skidded around a bend, mud and rain spraying in all directions. Mark pressed his body against the seat, holding his grandson tightly. The boy's faint glow pulsed stronger with every second, vibrating through the vehicle, as if it were resonating with something far beyond their understanding. "Dad, what's happening to him?" Hannah whispered, her voice trembling. Mark shook his head, his jaw tight. "I don't know, but it's connected to the door. The curator, he's not just after him. He wants him to unlock it." The boy stirred, hands glowing brighter. His small voice was trembling but carried an eerie authority. "I think I can open it," he whispered. "I think I can make it come." Mark's stomach tightened. "No, you don't know what it is. You're too young." The boy's eyes, wide and luminous, met Mark's. "I have to. They're coming. I can feel them waiting." Suddenly, the hum intensified. The SUV shook violently as if reality itself were bending around them. Metal groaned. Rain lashed harder. Mark instinctively braced himself against the dashboard. Through the windshield, a strange phenomenon appeared. A shimmering, translucent doorway, hovering in the middle of the storm. Its edges rippled like water, pulsating with energy. Lightning crackled around it, illuminating a strange, shadowy realm beyond. A world twisted, dark, and glowing faintly with ominous light. Mark's breath caught. "The door, it's real." Hannah clutched the boy tighter. "No, no, baby, don't do it." But the boy's tiny hands reached out instinctively toward the shimmering portal. The moment his fingers brushed the air of the doorway, a shock wave burst outward. The SUV was thrown slightly off balance. Rain turned to sparks of electricity in the air. The boy cried out, frightened but focused. "It's trying to pull me in." Mark lunged, trying to grab him, but the force was too strong. The glow around the boy intensified, engulfing him in a radiant, pulsing light. His small voice rang clearly over the chaos. "I can stop it. I can control it." Suddenly, the storm fell silent. Even the rain stopped. Only the faint hum of the doorway remained, vibrating in the air like a living heartbeat. The SUV's driver froze, eyes wide in terror. What is that?" Mark's heart pounded. He realized with dawning horror that the boy's power wasn't just defensive, it was creation. The boy wasn't merely opening a door. He was holding back something ancient, something alive, something that the curator had been waiting decades to unleash. And then, in a whisper that carried over the stillness, the curator's voice cut through the air. "Open it fully. Let the boy fulfill his purpose." Mark spun toward the sound. On the ridge above, the curator stood, eyes glowing faintly, holding the ornate key that pulsed in rhythm with the boy's glow. Behind him, shadows shifted unnaturally, twisting and waiting. Mark felt the pull of the doorway tug at his very soul. He could feel it calling, promising power, destruction, knowledge, all at once. He glanced at the boy, trembling but determined. "You're stronger than I ever imagined, but you're still my grandson. You're not going to let him take you." The boy's small lips pressed together. "I can do this, Grandpa." I have to. Lightning cracked violently, illuminating the door fully. Beyond it lay a world of impossible geometry, floating islands of shadow, rivers of light, and shapes that twisted the mind. A faint whispering came from the other side, as though something alive awaited their arrival. Mark's hands clenched. We have to protect him, whatever it takes. The boy's glow flared, and the doorway began to expand, rippling like water in a storm. The SUV trembled violently, and even the curator stepped back, eyes wide in cautious anticipation. I can feel it. I can make it stop, the boy whispered. But before he could act, Renshaw's voice cut sharply through the storm. Careful, it won't wait for you to be ready. Mark looked around. The rain, the wind, the night itself, all were drawn toward the doorway. It wasn't just a portal. It was a living thing. The boy stretched his hands fully toward it, and the light blazed brighter than the storm itself, illuminating every raindrop like diamonds. And then, with a deafening pulse that shook the ground, the doorway began to open. The storm had reached a fever pitch. Rain pelted down in sheets, wind howled like a living thing, and the very air around the SUV seemed charged with electricity. The shimmering doorway hovered before them, a rippling portal of shadow and light, pulsating in rhythm with the boy's glowing hands. Mark gritted his teeth, holding his grandson tightly. Stay with me. You're not going anywhere. The boy's small voice trembled but was resolute. I have to, Grandpa. I have to finish this. Mark shook his head violently. No, I won't let you go. You're my grandson. I won't let anyone take you. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the curator standing atop the ridge. His ki pulsed in time with the boy's glow. Shadows stretched unnaturally from him, reaching toward the doorway. You're making a mistake, Ellison's, the curator said, his voice cold, resonating with something ancient. The boy cannot choose. He is destined. The door must open. Alex stepped forward, bleeding and bruised, gripping a heavy metal rod. Destiny isn't real. Choices. And we choose our path. Stay behind me, kid, let me deal with him. The boy's glow pulsed brighter, vibrating through the SUV and the ground beneath them. The air itself seemed to hum. Mark realized with a terrifying clarity, the doorway wasn't just a portal, it was alive, a force waiting to be unleashed. And the boy was the lock and the key combined. The curator raised his hand, and a wave of shadow surged forward like a tidal force. The SUV rocked violently. Rain turned into sparks of energy that crackled around them. Mark's heart pounded. I'll buy you time. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. No, I'm not leaving you. Mark shook his head. This is our only chance. Reluctantly, she nodded, clutching her son. She and the driver floored the SUV, skidding down the muddy road, barely avoiding the surging shadows that clawed at the vehicle. Mark turned back toward the boy. Listen to me. You control it. You can stop this. Don't let him win. The boy's eyes glowed brighter than ever. I can feel it. I can make it. I can choose. The curator hissed, stepping forward, shadows writhing around him. No, the boy belongs to me. He cannot resist. Mark stepped in front of the boy, fists clenched, muscles straining. Then you'll have to go through me. Lightning struck nearby, and the boy's glow flared so brightly it illuminated the entire storm. Mark shielded his eyes. Suddenly, the boy lifted his hands fully toward the doorway. Energy surged like a river, tearing at the rain, the ground, the very air. The curator screamed as the power of the boy's will clashed with his own. Shadows twisted and writhed, but the boy's light pushed them back. I choose, the boy shouted. The curator's body froze. The key in his hand vibrated violently. His face twisted in shock and fury. Impossible! The boy's glow intensified. The doorway rippled, then collapsed in on itself, a silent implosion of light and shadow. A pulse of energy radiated outward, knocking everyone off their feet. Mark scrambled to his grandson, shielding him as the storm finally began to dissipate. Rain fell softly now, wind easing, and the doorway was gone. The curator lay on the ground, gasping, his shadows dispersed, The key shattered. Alex staggered toward him, rod in hand. It's over. He's done. The curator's eyes burned with rage, but his voice was faint, broken. You cannot stop, Fedor. Return. Mark stepped over the fallen man. Not tonight. He knelt beside his grandson, holding him tightly. You did it, kid. You made the choice. The boy hugged Mark's neck. I was scared. I know, Mark whispered, but you were stronger than all of us imagined. Hannah climbed out of the SUV, hugging both Mark and the boy. Tears streamed down her face. We're together. We're safe, finally. Alex approached, placing a hand on Mark's shoulder. You've got a hell of a family, Dad. But don't think this is the last we'll see of things like that. That curator, he's not the only one. Mark nodded, looking at his daughter and grandson. Then we'll be ready. Together. The storm clouds parted, revealing a sky tinged with dawn. Light broke over the horizon. For the first time in 20 years, Mark felt hope, not just for himself, but for his family, for the future, and for the boy who had unlocked more than just a door. The curator, defeated but still alive, stirred in the distance, eyes glinting with dark promise. The battle may have ended, but the story was far from over. Mark exhaled, holding his grandson close. We survived the night, and we'll survive whatever comes next. Together. The boy looked up, small and determined. Grandpa, I think I want to learn more about the door. Mark smiled faintly, the warmth of dawn breaking over him. Then we'll learn together, step by step. And as the family stood in the early morning light, battered but unbroken, the first real peace they had known in decades settled over them, at least for now.